everyone, to the Roughrider Happy Hour. My name is Peter Klein. Thank you very much for tuning in today. Coming up on the show, we're going to look at last week's loss against the Ottawa Redblacks and this week's game against the Montreal Alouettes. So, thank you all so much for tuning in today. Let's start with the game last week. It was such a weird game for the Roughriders. You had the weird calls, you had the rain, there was injuries. It was very strange. And unfortunately, coming out of this game, the referees are the story. And you never want that to happen in a game, but that just is what it is. And now look, I want to be abundantly clear about this. The referees aren't the reason why the Saskatchewan Roughriders... Sorry, my dog's in here with me. The referees aren't the reason why the Saskatchewan Roughriders didn't win this football game. The Riders are the reason why the Riders didn't win this game. And in fact, the referees kind of helped Saskatchewan not lose this game. When you have that defensive pass interference call that went down on Bain in overtime, that should have been the end of the football game, and we should have been coming out of that game with the Riders on a 3-game losing streak. So they got a huge call. That being said, I don't think those two roughing the passer calls were roughing the passer. You cannot bring me to the conclusion that's roughing the passer. I simply do not believe it, quite frankly. And so when you look at where these rules are coming from, obviously they are trying to protect the quarterback. And I certainly don't fault them for that. I absolutely 100% get that. It is, quarterback is probably the most important position in sports when you look at, the marketability of things. When you look at team success, you want to protect your quarterbacks out there. So 100% totally understand. The issue you are having is I don't know what the Rider players are supposed to do on both of those. On the one that injures Drew Brown, you had the Riders Brown doing a glute bridge to try to get away from the quarterback, and it just ended up not working out in that way. And he ends up hurting that quarterback, and now Ottawa may have a quarterback controversy on their hands after the game last night. But I do have some frustration about that, and as a defensive player, I don't know what you're supposed to do in that spot. You have two riders who are coming in at full tilt, and you have Ottawa blockers who are just going low and taking them out at the knees, which I would do if I had a defensive lineman or a linebacker coming full tilt right at me. I would want to get the hell out of the way. And so you don't fault them for doing that, but as they trip, I don't know what they're supposed to do, which is kind of the main topic of all of this. And I know if you took a drink every time I said that, you'd be approximately dead by now. But is the rider supposed to just, I said on Calgary radio this week, is he supposed to just be like Diglett and just burrow a hole down and okay, well, yeah, no, I'm just going to stay here. No, there's nothing he can do there. And so it's a really tricky play. And it is something where you have, you have no gray area in a sport where there's bodies moving all over the place, in a sport where grown men are moving at speeds that people this size just generally aren't supposed to do. And now you're supposed to have the body control to stop and shift on a dime. I don't know what it's supposed to, again, I'm saying it too much. I don't know what you're supposed to do. And it's a difficult spot for the Riders to be in. And one of the things that really got me is if they called it roughing the passer on the field, I actually don't have a problem with that. You have referees watching this in real time, and guys get hit in the legs. It's okay, well, got hit in the legs, that's what I'm supposed to be looking for. Here's the flag. But the fact that it came from the command center, which is its own conversation, and is focused now on the slow motion replay and all of this, and it still got called roughing the passer, is insanity to me. And this is the problem when you have things at breakneck speeds slowed down. Because as a guy, when you do slow motion replay, judging intent is impossible. Because it happens. So it looks like it's what you want to happen because that is what happens. And so when you see a guy roll into the quarterback's legs and it's in slow motion, it's oh, well, he could have stopped. But then you watch it at full speed and there is no possible way you can contort your way to not have that happen to a quarterback. So it's a really, really shitty situation. Again, not why the Riders lost. Saskatchewan did not deserve to win that game. And part of the reason why is the play of their quarterback. Shea Patterson, we are seeing more and more, is not a starting quarterback. He's just not. It was great to begin with, but it's gotten worse and worse and worse every time out on the field, and that is a problem. And it seems like it is a problem that is fixed now, with Trevor Harris getting into the lineup tonight against the Montreal Alouettes, but kind of looking a little bit longer term, I would be looking at trying to get another backup quarterback. It is still better than what it was a season ago. I'm not saying that at all. Last year it was dreadful. At least this is not like actively costing you games. But when you see some of the other guys who are stepping up in these areas, it's just he's not it. And I worry a little bit about the long-term health of Harris, a 38-year-old quarterback who has been injured in each of the last 2 seasons. But I just don't think Patterson's the guy anymore. And it's kind of back to the drawing board for Saskatchewan. But like I said, this is not a team that would deserve to win this game. They were absolutely the second best team in that game. But as mentioned before, the reinforcements are coming. As you have Trevor Harris and AJ Ouellette seem to be ready to go. Harris coming back is a huge boost. As I just mentioned, Patterson ain't it. But I do think you can maybe take a little bit from how Harris played in the beginning of the season and feel pretty good about where this team is going to go now. I think you now maximize some of the really good weapons that you have. And that has been, I think, one of the neat developments and something to keep an eye on tonight. Harris, it was Bain, it was Emelis, it was Stearns. That was basically it. Schaefer Baker as well, but that is not an option that he is burdened with right now. But now, like, Myers had a hell of a game in that game on last week out in Ottawa. And Ajo has, I think, shown some flashes of being a really, really talented football player. And so now you are looking at a Saskatchewan team that has a few more weapons than when Harris came in at the beginning of the season. And I think you feel very, very positive about that. Can he now maximize these? Also, with Ouellette coming in, it muddies things up a little bit. Now Hickson gets a little bit banged up as well, but I think Hickson was actually being a bit more effective as a running back for Saskatchewan than Ouellette was. Now Ouellette was getting a little bit better, but it was very clear he was hampered by injuries. So I think if you're Saskatchewan, the main hope here is that this is a guy who is coming back at full tilt, ready to go, and there are going to be no issues with this team moving forward. So that is the fingers crossed hope that for what is going to happen here as the season goes along. But now let's get into the game, Saskatchewan against Montreal. If you read the best bets piece over at 3 Down, you know how I'm going anyway, and assuming you're tuning into a Rider show for Rider Talk, you're probably not going to be overly thrilled with the direction that I take. But Saskatchewan, looking to put that game behind them as they take on the Montreal Alouettes. Cody Fajardo probably isn't going to be playing in this game. He is listed as the backup. Davis Alexander burst onto the scene against Saskatchewan. He goes 17-0 on the Riders in the second half, beating Saskatchewan. Since then, Riders haven't won, Alouettes haven't lost. Alexander has been really, really good. And again, you get a bit of a reinforcement coming back for Saskatchewan with Trevor Harris coming back into the lineup. And I do think that does become the rising tide that raises all ships. The issue does become what's going on the right side of the offensive line. They have gone through 5 offensive linemen there in the last 4 weeks, starting with Hardrick getting injured back in week 6. And it has been a revolving door, both in human beings coming in and pass rushers blowing right past them to the quarterback. And when you have Harris, who is not a mobile quarterback in the slightest, coming off of an injury against a very aggressive, very good Montreal defense, that is where I have some great concerns about how this game is going to go from a Saskatchewan standpoint. You're facing a Montreal defense that is first or second in basically every defensive category, including net offense, opponent passing yards, and opponent's points allowed. Sorry. They shut down Saskatchewan in the second half of the matchup 3 weeks ago, helping Alexander to that comeback. And I just have real concerns about how Saskatchewan is going to be able to do offensively. And then defensively, Alexander has been great. 29% of his drives have ended in a touchdown. That is the second most in the Canadian Football League behind Trey Ford and 5% ahead of Cody Fajardo. Davis Alexander has just unlocked something in this offense. Now, Saskatchewan gets a bit of a break. No Tyson Philpott in this game, but we saw last week for Montreal, Rambo stepped up, the kid out of Miami. Shout out to the U. College football season starting this week. And so I do think that this is a really interesting matchup for Saskatchewan's defense. They have a couple weeks of film now on Davis Alexander, and he kind of lit them up. We'll see now how Saskatchewan is able to respond. They have been able to adjust game to game pretty well, but this is still a defense that's had some troubles. But last week, they were much more disciplined against Crum than they were when they faced Trey Ford a couple of weeks ago. So there are some adjustments that can be made on the defensive side, but overall, I just don't think Saskatchewan is going to be able to put up a whole lot of points on this Montreal defense. So I do have the Alouettes covering in this game. At last checked, they are, I believe, favored by 1.5. So that's going to do it for the Rider Happy Hour. Thank you guys so much for tuning in this week. We'll be back next week. We're probably going to get back to more regular on Thursday. There's just been a lot going on around here. So we'll get back to Thursday. You can see the social medias. If you're watching on the bottom of the screen, follow me at Primetime Klein. If you're watching, make sure you like it. If you're listening, make sure you review it. Subscribe wherever you are tuning in. Follow me on social media at Primetime Klein, and I will talk to all of you later. Have a great day, everyone.